In my book, you are one of the world's experts in debate.
I am the 2010 World Debating Champion.
He said, in the view of a religious person, to telling you guys that if we kill the queen, that's no problem because that doesn't stop you from finding another woman and crowning down Israelis. 4.
I have coached 5 teams who had won or have won the World Debating Championship and 6 teams that won the European Debating Championships. I started the National Schools program in Israel of debating, and I judge debate competitions around the world regularly. I've devoted my last 30 odd years to debate, so it could be said that I know something about debating.
So we have this very bad history of arguing with people and convincing.
Do you have 20 minutes for me? And are you willing to listen and maybe to change your mind?
Dear Yoni, so good to see you. It's been too long.
It's been too long, Professor Ariely. Very good to see you.
Very good. So, Yoni, in my book, you are one of the world's experts in debate. Is that a fair?
That's objectively correct. I wouldn't say subjectively. I am the 2010 World Debating Champion. I have coached 5 teams who had won or have won the World Debating Championship and 6 teams that won the European Debating Championships. I started the National Schools program in Israel of debating, and I judge debate competitions around the world regularly. I've devoted my last 30 odd years to debate, so it could be said that I know something about debating.
Very good. And today, though, when you debate with people who are other debate experts.
Yes.
And there's a set of rules and
Yes.
so on. And the discussion I want for us to have today is not about a debate in a professional debate structure, but general discussion.
Of course.
And we have these challenges today where, also in debate, I know that you practice both sides of the debate. What if I need to defend
commonly, yeah,
this and what I did this? And of course, in regular life, this is not the case.
Yeah.
And there is this trend that when people have an opposite opinion, they get discounted the moment they even say that they have that opinion. So correct. In the US, a good example is abortion rights. When you find out that the person across the table from you has the opposite opinion, the first instinct is to say they're broken. Something in them is not working well.
Yeah.
And of course from there it only starts getting worse. And then the other thing that I've noticed is I've been doing the following thing. I asked people to think about the last 3 years of discussions that they had with people. And I said, if you take all of these discussions, and let's say you counted all of them, how many of them ended up with the other side of the debate telling you, you know what, you're absolutely right. I never thought about it this way. You bring really good points. From now on, I'm changing my opinion.
Yeah.
And most people say never happened. Some people say, oh yes, it happened rarely. And when I say when, they said, they don't remember. And then when I asked the other way, I said, how often did you come up with a statement that said to the other side, you know what, you're absolutely right? People also say almost never happened. So we have this very bad history of arguing with people and convincing them. It's like one of the most epic human failure. You say, we're I don't know what other human activity are we so close to 0% success as convincing people in arguments. And I think that these arguments have at least two goals. The first one, of course, is to convince somebody.
Yeah.
But the second goal is to decrease polarization.
Yes.
If we end up leaving a discussion with somebody, them hating us more and we hating them more, we haven't gotten closer to anything useful.
Correct.
So okay, so we've set up the problem. The problem is not in the debate tournament. The problem is, around the dinner table
Yeah.
with colleagues at work. Oh, and by the way, one other challenge is that at least in the US, there's a tendency to ask people not to have debates at work,
Yeah. Not to discuss politics at
not
work.
to
Yeah.
discuss anything that could be offensive, not to
Right.
discuss religion, and not to discuss
Right.
gender, and not to discuss, and not to discuss. And I think it's very damaging because where else in the world would you meet people that you deeply respect but have a different opinion?
And could
Than
exchange opinions with. Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, so lots of things are going against us. So the topic for today I want us to have is we're coming into this election season.
Yes.
How do we have useful discussions? Useful in terms of persuasion, useful in terms of getting people to dislike each other a little less. So what would be your number one recommendation?
So, first of all, I'm sure you have a lot of contribution on the topic yourself, Professor Ariely. But I have some thoughts on the matter as well. First of all, I think that mass media might not be the solution, let alone social media. I'm in this conversation operating under the assumption that at the very least, the Democrats are operating a grassroots campaign, canvassing, knocking on doors, initiating one-on-one conversations. And in those conversations, when I am asked, can you convince another person? The answer is yes, in those conversations. So I have a few techniques up my sleeve. I'll try to be succinct in presenting them. The first, which is a self-explanatory one, is ascertain that the other side is willing to listen to you and to be convinced. If that is not true, for don't fight it out. Not all fights are worth fighting. Not all battles are worth fighting. If the other side says, even if Trump is an Iranian spy, I'm still voting Trump, forget it. Don't try to convince that person.
Okay, and what would be your sentence? How would you, let's say you come and you talk to me, what would be the sentence in which you'll try to figure out if this is the case?
Dear Dan, do you have 20 minutes for me? And are you willing to listen and maybe to change your mind?
And can people answer that honestly? I mean,
Yeah,
I understand if people say no, then it's clear.
yeah.
But the people who are saying yes,
I think if you're a nice person and you're talking and you're being pleasant and you're not coming across as aggressive or offensive, I think people will say yes more often
okay.
than not.
So you get, and it's when you talk about the psychology of that, you
Yes,
talked about sorting people out.
yes,
You said there are people that are not worth convincing. Don't waste your time.
right.
But it's also possible that this approach of saying somebody, "Are you willing to be convinced?"
Yes.
is getting people to reframe their own listening.
I'm very very soft about it. As I said, do you have 20 minutes for me? And are you willing to
Yeah, yeah.
maybe change your mind?
No, but I like it. I like it. I'm saying it. I think
Yeah,
it does something else. I think it's not only telling you who to keep on talking to and who not.
yeah.
I think that if a person has just committed
To maybe changing their
to maybe
mind.
this, they're listening in a different way, right?
Correct,
So when we
correct.
go back to these discussions, what we have without success, the reason is basically that when we talk and we express our opinion, and when the other person talks, we counter argue. So we end up spending an hour half an hour
Correct.
we talk aloud, and half an hour we talk inside. We defend our position,
Correct.
and because of that, nobody changes their mind. But maybe if you get people to pre-commit to listen
Yeah,
with an eye, that's already a good approach.
I do.
By the
However,
way,
that sorry.
my sentence, which is different than yours, is to ask the question, what would it take to change your mind?
I also asked that, but at a later stage.
Okay, okay. So continue. So the
I'll
first
get
thing
to that.
is to sort people out, but also to get some commitment to listening.
To listening.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the number one most important thing. When I am asked what is the most transferable, I should note that for the past 15 years I haven't been engaged in involved in professional debating, but rather giving lectures and workshops to companies and organizations and nonprofits about what I call message conveyance and effective communication, interpersonal communication. So I'm not used only to the shiny debating venue, but
Yeah.
to really to real life arguments. When I'm asked what's the main transferable technique or skill from the life of from real debating to real life, I answer stay on clash. What does it mean to stay on clash? Most people, when they try to convince, they stay in their own comfort zone. They speak about what they think is strong, what they think is interesting, what they think is persuasive, not about what the other side needs to hear, and surely not about what the other side objects to. And here I have, can I share 2 slides?
You can try.
I can try. I claim that in every interaction in which one side tries to convince another side of something, whether be it a presentation or a conversation or a speech or an interview or whatever, the conversation can be roughly about 5 topics. And this matters because people often focus and prioritize the wrong topics.
Okay.
So what are the 5 topics? First of all, number one, is there a problem that needs to be solved? For example, is America doing well or is America doing badly and there's a problem that needs to be solved? Second, solution. Can Kamala Harris slash Donald Trump solve the problem? Third, the moral justification. Can Is Kamala Harris slash Donald Trump a viable moral actor that we can morally choose? That's not big in real life, but sometimes it's very relevant. Fourth, benefits versus harms or costs. You have to show that your solution is beneficial. And third, and fifthly, and lastly, is what I call why specifically. When there are more than one idea, when there's more than one idea on the table, it's not good enough to show that your idea is good. You have to show that it is better than other people's ideas in order for it to be selected. Now, what's my problem? And this is a problem that is predominant with debaters and with laymen and women in real life. I think that something is persuasive and interesting and strong, therefore I talk about it a long time. The other side either agrees or doesn't care or is not interested, and I've wasted not only my convincing time, but the patience and listening of the other side. That's why I say, and for example, just as an example, I might think that Trump's moral qualities are a very, very, very strong issue. And I am talking to a potential voter, an undecided voter, and I spend 15 minutes talking about Trump's moral qualities. Now, to that voter, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
They much more care about who can solve the problems of America. And I've wasted 15 minutes of their time and my time and their patience and listening. My advice is find out where's the most likely resistant anticipated on what topic, and focus on preempting those topics in the time you have to speak. For instance,
Yeah.
if we go back to your sentence earlier and say, what do you care about the most? What does it take me to convince you? And they say, look, I am unsure about Kamala. I know that Trump has experience, but I'm most interested in who's gonna get our country on track. Okay, fair enough. I know that I need to talk about the benefits versus harms and the solution to the problem. That way, I make sure that I don't spend endless time and endless patience in a vain endeavor to convince the other person of something they might agree with or they might not care about. That's the number one mistake people make.
So you basically say that the way that empathy works
Yes,
is that we don't really feel the other person.
yes,
We feel ourselves and we project it on the other person.
yes,
Like even when we see somebody getting injured, the
yes,
way that the brain works is we have mirror neurons and we get the pain and we experience our own pain as a reflection of that.
yeah,
So you're saying in a debate, the problem is empathy. We empathize with ourselves, we project ourselves on the other person, and we say what are the things that are more important to us that must be the most important to the other
exactly.
person. But how do you find it out? Like the example you gave was an example of a very cooperative
Yes.
person. So let's play it out. Try to find out for me what are the most important topics.
So a lot of times, I'm guessing, I don't know, you'll be doing it with people you slightly know.
Okay.
You can sort of guess where they're coming from,
Okay.
but if you don't, ask. Ask just like the way you did.
But
What
no, but you say what is more important to you, moral or I mean, you ask those.
it's not what's more important, it's what will it take, as just as you said it,
I
Professor,
see.
what will it take for you to change your mind and vote X in the next election? What are the most important topics to you? Yes.
I see. Okay. So it's really about the opinion change. So you don't
Yes.
say important in general. You say
Yes.
important for opinion change, and
Yes.
I could say I really care about what this country would be in 10, 20, and 30 years, and who is more likely to get us into a better situation.
Yes.
Or I could say I care the most about foreign policy. I care about,
Yes.
but you want me to tell you, and you ask for one thing, or you ask for two, or
I
you let
in
people.
general, I can get two, I can get three.
Okay, so that
And
that
yeah,
helps you narrow
the clash.
narrow the discussion, and
Yes.
it might make you uncomfortable because you might not be able to argue. Like I think that when people, the amateurs like me, debate or have a
Mm-hmm.
discussion, I think that we have an image that we're fighting in court. We are appearing in front of a judge and we're making argument, and we love it when we make like a good sentence and we can say something. We feel good, but you're saying don't go after your good feeling. Go after where you need to be important, even if you're less qualified to make the argument. It's still the important argument. Okay.
I find what you're saying very identifiable, and if you give debaters too much time, or you give regular people, regular people, too much time, they will eat it up. I say go for gold. We have an election to win.
Mhm.
That's our mission. Nothing else matters right now
Okay.
in this discussion.
Another thing that I think is important in this regard is that a real life debate
Yeah,
might not be won in one sitting. And if
correct.
we have the objective of meeting somebody once for 20 minutes and convincing them, that might be
Tough.
too high of a bar.
Yeah.
And maybe the question is about repetition and
Yes.
about slowness, and if we have those objectives, and we start with, are you willing to be convinced? What kind of things would convince you? Here's a couple of arguments. Would you start thinking about that? That might be.
I agree. I agree. It takes time. It takes respect. It takes, or rather, a respectful attitude. It takes time, and it takes some patience. But I claim, as someone who, forgive me for boasting, have changed political opinions of people throughout the years, it can be done.
Yeah. Okay. So one other question I have about the beginning
Yes.
is, I have two questions. One is it important to find commonalities? Is it important to basically say, let's first of all figure out what we agree on? Is this a good strategy before you start with changing people's opinions?
It is very important, not always for its own sake. Meaning, I need to find what you and I agree on in order to A, know what I don't need to convince you of
Yeah.
because we agree. B, I need to know what we agree of in order to show you, that's another technique I teach, that your own logic is in dissonance.
Yeah.
You basically believe two opposite opinions, and if I can show you that in a respectful manner, you will change one of your opinions.
Yeah.
And it's important that I know what we agree on, so that I can show you, or rather, explore the idea with you that we agree on that. Wouldn't you also agree that something else is much more important and we should focus on that? And lastly, I need to know what we agree on in order to disagree, very respectfully, and make the case for
Yeah.
my disagreement.
I also think it's important for liking.
Yes.
It's also important for liking. And there's another version of this that is important. There's a lot of beautiful research that talks about the fact that when people feel that they have been hurt,
Yes.
they want their suffering to be acknowledged.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and many times the moment you acknowledge people, now you can move on. So to say
Yeah.
something, I understand that you on your side of the political spectrum must feel X, Y, and Z, and this is terrible. You just acknowledge those. So
Absolutely.
acknowledgement, similarity, liking, agreement about things. Okay, but what would you? So let's say you start with a 20-minute question, and would you
Yes.
be convinced? Then maybe you do something on, let's agree and let's acknowledge.
I would pick, I just stated four techniques that I would pick one or two of.
Okay.
I would assert or not assert, I'm sorry, understand the similarities and agreements between us. Then, based on these similarities and agreements, I would either strive to show you something else is much you. I will say I will spend a lot of effort saying you are right. Your side of the political spectrum has suffered a lot. I acknowledge it. I agree with it. I know you're so right to feel that way. And then, wouldn't you agree that something else, as per what you told me in the beginning, is just much more important for the future of our country? So that's one technique.
Yeah.
Another
So
technique.
let's play
Yeah.
this out. Let's play
Okay.
this out. So why
Okay.
don't
Okay.
you let's take abortion as an example,
Okay.
and let's for the sake of the argument, let's say that I'm pro-life,
Yes.
and then you're trying to convince me that to be
To vote Kamala.
yes.
Okay. Mr. Ariely, what is the Professor Ariely? What is the most in this coming election? What is the deciding factor for you? What are you most interested in? What would it take me to convince you to vote for Kamala Harris?
If I would be convinced that she would be against abortions.
I see. I'll level with you on two things. First, I don't think Kamala will be against abortions, and that's not something I am willing to guarantee. I'll also level with you on something else. I don't particularly like abortions. And that's to put it very mildly, I don't know that they should be at some stages legal. Being a man, I don't know a lot about the physicality or the anatomy of it, but I have my own problems with abortions. However, I believe, and you might agree with me, I hope you agree with me, that the economic state and jobs rate of the American people, American people being able to put food on their table, being able to support themselves via one job, not four. The US economy doing as well as it has done in the last 4 years. I just believe that abortions could be resolved one way or another by either religious groups and or if necessary the Supreme Court, as has as happened. I just believe that food, you said you're pro-life, food on the table and the ability to support that born baby, that's pro-life for me. That's also pro-life for me. And I believe you would you might agree with me that's more important. And I would want another 5 minutes, if I may, to show you why I believe that Kamala Harris is the one to provide, is the one to better provide for food on the tables of Americans and hold the economy than Donald Trump. Unless you don't think that's more important.
Okay, so very interesting, but now let's walk me through the strategy. So you
Right.
started by agreeing with me to some degree. So
Correct.
you put us on the same side.
Correct.
You define yourself as sympathetic to the cause rather than oppositional.
Correct.
And then you basically try to take the same idea of pro-life and you expanded it.
Yes.
You expanded to say pro-life doesn't end the moment the baby is born, it continues.
To hope that if you're indeed pro-life, you will extend that logic
Yeah.
and reach the conclusion that the economic situation is more important.
Yeah. And you basically say pro-life meaning more general.
Yeah.
It means that babies need to be fed and people should have good education and all kinds of things like that. And you say this is what the economy is. You're kind of
Yeah.
redefining the fight against poverty
Yeah.
as a
That's
pro-life
pro-life. Yeah.
issue. And you say and this pro-life issue, and you try to argue, is more important than the abortion pro-life issue.
Which has alternatives. Yes.
Yeah. And now, okay. And now, if I would give you 5 more minutes,
I would do some fact stating and alongside stories and emotional appeal to show that Kamala Harris is the better candidate to do that.
To do that.
Yes.
Um, okay. And was this assuming that I already told you something beforehand about economics,
No,
or no?
no, no,
You don't need that. So
no. I think your logic conveyed that you're pro-life.
yeah,
Your statement
yeah, that's right.
conveyed that you're pro-life. I assume that you care about people living,
Yeah.
and from then I extended the logic.
Okay. But you could have tried to take it into other domain. You could have said morals, or you could have taken it into something else. But you chose economics because you just assume that it's more likely to be a hot button issue in these times.
I actually believed I might be able to sway you on economics and not be able to sway you on morals.
Okay.
I people who are for or against abortions have their morals set in stone. I don't try to change their mind on that.
Okay. Um, there's a joke that's asked that a rabbi, an imam, and a priest meet and they discuss when an embryo is viable.
Yeah.
And the priest said, the moment is the first heartbeat. And the imam says, the moment that the cells
Yeah.
split. And the rabbi said, the moment the embryo graduates from medical school.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so
No,
that's kind of
no,
one type of discussion. But
correct.
tell me, let's assume that we finish this, and let's assume I'm positively disposed, and I say something like, you know what, I haven't thought about this, but I'm willing to keep on thinking about this broader definition of pro-life. How do you end the discussion? How do you now make it more likely that I'll continue or change or something like that?
I make a decisive statement, a decisive yet respectful and diplomatic statement, i.e. or e.g. pro-life doesn't end with birth, food on the table, jobs, support your family. It's all pro-life, and I believe I showed you I Kamala do it, and I appreciate you listening to me today, sir. Not a given. It's been very, very, very pleasant to meet you. And regardless of what you do in November, I wish you the very best. Then, as a Kamala volunteer, follow up 2 days later.
Okay. So then you follow up. And do you ask them to keep on thinking about this? Do you ask them to,
I don't give them homework.
okay. You don't
I
give them.
don't give them homework.
Okay. So that's one approach. Is there anything else that you think is kind of a good?
Yes, my debating career, I'm too old to have many YouTube debates filmed. Many debates filmed on YouTube, but I have two or three. And I made a career in debating from weaponizing the tactic under this logic. And I'd like to give an example. I Before the elections in 2016, I was gonna vote for Clinton, and it turned out an Israeli Jewish friend of mine was gonna vote for Trump, which I did not care for. I did the same thing. I asked her, would you give me 30 minutes and may be willing to change your mind?
Mm-hmm.
It was in a party setting. We were sitting by in the side on some chairs. She said yes. I talked about Trump wanting to ban Muslims. I talked about Trump wanting to create a national registry of Muslims. I talked about Trump wanting to disallow Muslims to do whatever based on their religion. And I said, look, In no way am I saying, I want to emphasize this, in no way am I saying Trump is Hitler. But can you tell me the difference between what Trump is currently suggesting than what Hitler did in his early career? Not in the gas camps, not in the concentration camps, by suggesting a national registry of Jews, by banning Jews from entering shops. But can you tell me the difference? And she thought about it long and hard, and she said, no, I can't. And I told her, decisive statement, I don't believe that a person who would persecute and enact policies upon people, upon individuals, upon citizens, purely based on their religion, is someone we as Jews can morally vote for. And she said, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so walk me through the logic of that argument. The
Yes,
logic of that argument is that you make an analogy.
yes,
You make an analogy for something very undesirable,
correct.
and you make it hard to, and you ask them to refute the analogy.
I asked them to combine one opinion they have, vote Trump, and one opinion they have, hate what Hitler did. And I asked them to combine it, and they can't. And more often than not, not always, but more often than not, they would change their mind.
So this is kind of a strategy that you've used a lot, and
In debating, for sure, yeah.
yeah, and it's always with kind of an analogy to another story that you
Yes,
disagree with.
yes, yes. I famously won a debate against Oxford.
Lizzie told us that religion is not an important food. These are only buildings, and they can go and pray in the church down the street. Because there is no difference between what Lizzie said in the view of a religious person to telling you guys that if we kill the queen, that's no problem, because that doesn't stop you from finding another woman and frowning.
On the topic that desecration of holy places should be considered legitimate war tactic. As Oxford said, there were secular Oxford kids, and this was in England. As Oxford said, look, destroying a church doesn't stop you from believing in your religion. You can just go and pray in the church down the street. It doesn't stop you from practicing your religion. To which I replied, in front of a full English crowd, under this logic, this means that if we kill the queen, that's no problem, because you can just find another woman and crowning her. It doesn't stop you from practicing monarchy. And I got a standing ovation, and Oxford were out. So yeah, I used it a lot.
Just kind of give me a sense of what analogies would you use for the coming elections? What it's a hard exercise to come up with
Yeah,
those
yeah.
those
I don't
analogies.
know. I don't know yet because we just switched candidates, and the campaign is has very much re-begun.
Mhm.
So I don't know yet what kind of analogies, but
I think also the Hitler analogy is being using so much.
yeah, no. If you if you
It's very,
if
very
you
painful.
can if you can, don't go there.
Yeah.
I knew she was a Jewish friend, and I allowed myself. Don't go there. Look, it's a tough question because I don't know anything about JD Vance. Only today was I informed of Kamala Harris's pick for vice president. What I can tell you is that I'll ask you a question. Look, and again, do you know Jordan Klepper's segments on The Daily Show?
Yeah.
So when he says Trump wants to be a dictator, and the guy answers, maybe we need a dictator. So those people you don't try to
Yeah.
convince. But but maybe not analogies yet. I don't know about analogies yet, but Kamala Harris posted on Facebook today saying, should a guy that said we need to terminate the US Constitution be allowed near the Oval Office? I want an answer on that. It's not a rhetorical question for me.
Yeah.
If you want to terminate the U.S. Constitution, should you be president of the United States?
Yeah. So but that's not an analogy. Now
It's
you're
not an
asking.
analogy. No,
No,
it's
now
not
you're
an
asking something
analogy.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you basically, so the conflict there is between what is our view of democracy,
Yes.
of a long-term democracy,
Yes.
and what about a particular behavior that might undermine it.
Yes.
Okay, I want to switch to one other approach that I like,
Yeah.
and this is based on research on what is called the illusion of explanatory depth. And the illusion of explanatory depth is the idea that people have knowledge and confidence, and usually the confidence is way over their knowledge. So, for example, I demonstrated this with the flush toilet. We asked people, do you understand how a flush toilet works? They said, yes. On a scale from 1 to 7, almost 7. And then we said, okay, luckily I have all the pieces of a flush toilet here. Can you please assemble it? Nobody could assemble it. And then you go back to us and you say, how well do you understand the flush toilet? And people say, not so much. And the idea is you don't fight people, you come from their direction. You say,
Right.
please help me understand how this works. So for example, we did this with the elections, the last American elections, and we took people who thought that the elections were stolen. And we say, we're not arguing. Just help us understand how are elections being
stolen.
tallied
Yeah.
and how do they get stolen? Like, give me a mechanism. Like, how does it work?
Yeah.
And at the end of this discussion, almost everybody says, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, do we switch people from, being sure that the elections were stolen to being sure they were not? No. But do we shake their confidence? Yes. And the illusion of explanatory depth was done on lots of things. You ask people, do you understand how a zipper works? They say yes. You say, please explain. I don't know. And the idea is that we usually argue about the facts, but maybe
Yeah.
it's good to first puncture people's confidence a little bit. So when you say, what country do you want to see? And you say, I want to see a country that is prospering financially, no poverty, no violence. And then you say, and how is your approach going to get it? And so that will be kind of the idea is not to argue, but get people to walk through the mechanism. Okay, you're proposing this is the answer to this. Explain to me how exactly is it solving that? And by probing and probing and probing, you would get to the situation where people say, you know what? I don't know. I trust this person more than this person, but I don't know how their policy of taxation and immigration and this would necessarily lead to the result I'm expecting.
That's fascinating because I haven't mentioned it today, but I have a 5 step of response technique. Number 2 of which is ask and demand an explanation. So I haven't had the research backing of why I want it, but I do know that people often uh, have a hard time explaining themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly what you said right now.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Okay. So we have this other approach of trying
Yes.
to change confidence first before you do knowledge. And by the
Yes.
way, what's interesting about this approach, let's say you have somebody who believes the elections were stolen.
Yes.
And let's say that it's your uncle and it's a diff conversation and you don't want to attack that.
Yes.
It turns out that attacking other things
Yes.
can have a general effect. So if you attack confidence in knowledge, you also have a general effect. So
Interesting.
if I ask you, let's say I say, okay, I'm not going to talk about elections.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about how computers work. Do you understand how a computer works? And you say, you know what? Not so much. Do you understand how data in the cloud get get stored? You could do all kinds of steps that are not about the elections being stolen. They're adjacent, and it's not as effective. Of course, the best is to attack directly,
Right.
but even if it's adjacent, it can help.
Can shake up confidence, which is
Confidence, that's right. And then you start saying, okay, what else do I think I know but I don't know?
and
Okay.
in masses that's very important.
Yeah. What else? What's your and last trick?
My last trick is if you have to disagree with someone about anything. I disagree with a very, very specific method. I call it positive language personally,
Mm-hmm.
negative language impersonally.
Okay.
And what I do is, if I disagree with someone, I will go to extreme lengths to agree with them on something and use personal language to strengthen them. Professor Ariely, Dan, I think that was a great question. And I think what you just mentioned about shaking confidence was illuminating in my eyes. And I'm not even talking about your list of best-selling books of which all of which I read. I think the conversation today could have had a bit more uh, concrete goals to it, and that would be my suggestion for next time. Now, it's not my suggestion for next time. I just made that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I wanted to show you is everything positive I say is Dan, you, yours, on for you, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything negative I say is in neutral form or about someone else. My favorite example of all time was when I flew to China during COVID to work. I had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. Then I got to the hotel. I didn't have the right papers, and they wanted to throw me into another 2 weeks of quarantine. I saw that the clerk's name was Elaine. So I told her, Elaine, I truly appreciate the efforts you're doing on my behalf. I thank you so much for the grace you're doing with me, and I apologize for the troubles that are caused to you by this mistake made by the hotel. Everything positive, Elaine. Everything negative, the hotel. Now, of
Mm-hmm.
course, she works at the hotel, but she's still a person. And when she hears herself attacked, she will raise defenses. Doesn't hear herself attacked, lower defenses. So I found that when I want to disagree with someone, I don't want to raise their defenses. I empower them in some way, and I disagree via a third party or a neutral language. And this can make magic happen.
Okay. So we got lots of advice. I think we need to practice it. I don't think
Yes,
it's not that some of the things are easier, like
yes,
finding out, like asking you for time, asking you if you're willing to be persuaded. I think asking you what are the topics. Some of the things are more
yes,
complex. Um, but by the way, this question that I use, what would it take to change your mind, also has an element of the illusion of explanatory depth,
yes.
because people start thinking about what they actually know and don't know,
Yeah,
and it's an effective approach there too. So, um, one last question for you.
please.
So, given your expertise,
Yes.
How do you handle conversation with your friends and family? Are they always worried that you're using that you're trying to convince them? Is it do you are these techniques for you just so natural that you use them all the time? Is it helpful? Is it
I'm going to
making
disappoint you,
making your
sir.
social life worse?
I'm going to disappoint you, sir. I never argue outside of work.
Okay,
I
interesting.
I don't. I have enough arguments at my job. I never argue outside my work. Is it related to the fact that I'm 44 and single? Nobody knows.
Okay,
But I
maybe.
don't. I don't argue outside work.
Okay, Yoni,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the time.
Yeah.
I might come up with more questions as we get closer to the election and ping you
Okay.
for another discussion. So don't quit yet, but thank you
Not
so so
quitting.
so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor just speaking to you, Professor Ariely. Thank you.